And we are live. What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to InvestQ. And we did have a pretty interesting market today, and we are going to talk a lot about a different amount of things. Specifically, we're going to start off the live stream a little bit differently than we typically do, because most of the time when we do these live streams, we actually cover the broader market analysis first, and then we typically do. Just making sure, yeah. And then we'll typically do the individual stocks afterwards. But that's not going to be the case today. Today we're going to start off with ticker symbol LAES COSQ. And again, with that being said, we're going to also cover what we're unpacking with the stock today is not just going to be about the price action. It's also going to be about this news release that came out today, which is how Carlos Moreira, the CEO, had a letter to the shareholders, and how this kind of this is his way of putting an effort to all of these shareholders, showing the efforts they've made and the confidence that management continues to have for the second half for the fiscal year of 2026. So first off, you can go live border. Sorry guys, 1 second. Live border, what do you mean? Thank you very much, Selena, for pointing it out. Please let me know exactly what it is you mean. And again, I do appreciate you. But anyways, going back to what it is I was talking about. So with COSQ, today we did have a pretty bullish day. They closed the day on a gain of almost 7%. And after hours, they're currently surging at 1.05% after hours. And again, we've had days where we've seen stocks surge a pretty decent amount. I mean, we've been in QBTS, and QBTS has surged dramatically because I talked about it in previous videos how that was one of my first big winners from a P&L perspective. So again, this was a crazy day as they went for an 18% gain on the day. Now, other things that we're going to be covering in today's live stream will be regarding from the broader market analysis, because we do see that COSQ is not moving alone. You're seeing that the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 are outperforming, and again, the S&P has reached record highs again, another time. And in the chat, I want to know where it is you're watching from and what stocks you are keeping on your watch list today. And again, real quick, before we do start and we get into LAES and all the things that I want to cover today, we are reaching certain milestones. Again, currently, we're at 774 subscribers, and we are doing our very best on this channel to grow. And let's hit that 1,000 milestone together, guys. So for all of you that are not subscribed yet, feel free to smash that like and subscribe button, as all of the support that I get from you really does help, and I do appreciate it. So going on to COSQ, let's start off with the actual topic and let's start rambling here. So shares, shareholders are pretty happy with what it is we're seeing today from a price action perspective, as we had that move of 7%. Now, I don't want to say, and again, I don't want to say that everything's going to be peachy from here on out. I'm not saying that I'm pessimistic or I'm blindly optimistic, because on this channel, we do our best to put the facts and just present the data for what it is. Now, I do think that the timing is interesting, though, because the fact that Carlos Moreira did release a very extensive letter to all of the shareholders. What I like about this letter is that it's not simply the fact that it's just saying that quantum is going to be huge and COSQ is positioned to benefit. It wasn't something that generic and that bland. There are legit numbers that he put out into this article right here. There are certification timelines. There are targets that they have regarding commercialization. They got financial targets as well. And in my opinion, what's most important is that management gives us a pretty clear, I guess you could say scorecard, or a scorecard for what investors should be watching out for the remainder of 2026 regarding their priorities for the remainder of the year. Now, when we look at the first half of 2026, the first number that immediately jumps out, in my opinion, would be regarding the revenue. Now, I can't use my clicker to, unfortunately, I cannot use my clicker to highlight it, but it's okay. The unaudited revenue for the first half of 2026 was approximately $11 million against $5 million revenue in the same period of 2025. And again, that represents the amount of growth of 120% year over year. Now, another piece that I think is also equally important is that Q1, they generated $4 million in revenue, while in the second quarter for the preliminary revenue of Q2 2026 was at $7 million. So that also shows that acceleration is being sequential, and we are stacking the increase in revenue quarter over quarter as of right now. And what management specifically called this was a clear sequential acceleration rather than just a one-off combination. Now, I do want to make things very clear is because we need to see that continue. If we're having this sequential acceleration the way that we did for Q1 to Q2, we don't want to just see it. We don't want to just see this for these 2 quarters. We want to see that happen in Q3, Q4, and then following into the rest of the year for 2027. So if you're a shareholder and you right now are looking for evidence that the business itself is beginning to scale, in my opinion, this is exactly the direction that you want those numbers moving. Now, where this growth is coming from, and they were pretty specific with what it was. If you go under the first half 2026 growth, liquidity, and visibility section, you're going to see here that it says that the growth was broadly based. And a few of the products that did help with that was Vault IC. You're going to also see PKI, IC Alps, and the Quantix section overall. And management says that demand for its Vault IC secure element family is continuing to expand. Its PKI and trust services business is growing, and it's growing its recurring base right now. And IC Alps, which SealsQ did acquire in August of 2025, contributed to a full 6 months of consolidated revenue. Now, importantly, what in my opinion is important is that SealsQ, it did generate its first revenue related to Quantix Edge Security Design, the Quantix Edge Security Design Center in Murcia, Spain. Now, I want to take a step back and emphasize that for a second, because eventually acquisitions and investments have to turn that into actual revenue. And you can't necessarily indefinitely build an investment thesis around announcements of technology. The customers, they do end up ultimately having to pay you, and we're beginning, in my opinion, to see the pieces of this strategy actually contribute to the top line. Selena, thank you for the comment again. Cool, you're good. You can. Okay, so thank you, Selena, for the input, and thank you for letting me know that the quality of music is good. If you guys were there for the Big Bear AI live stream, you wouldn't know what I mean. I had to do that in 2 parts. The first time I accidentally made a mistake and had some looping audio. So thank you, Selena, for shouting that out to me. I really do appreciate you. Now, the next portion that I want to talk about in this letter that the CEO gave to shareholders is regarding one of the biggest numbers in the entire letter. It's one of the biggest numbers, the biggest financial numbers regarding their the fact that they have approximately $485 million in cash and short-term investments. And to be clear, for a company that is currently generating revenue at this scale, the scale that they're at right now, that liquidity position is huge. $485 million is absolutely ginormous. And the important caveat to consider is that management, they specifically mentioned that the $125 million registered direct offering completed in March. So what we need to remember is that some of this liquidity, it was raised from investors. Now, cash is not automatically shareholder value right there. What matters is what management does with the cash, because right now, that is, in my opinion, why capital allocation is, they're going to be one of the biggest things that I'm going to be watching for with SealsQ. So, and speaking on big numbers, let's talk about their pipeline, because their pipeline exceeds $225 million in identified opportunities through 2029. And more than $60 million is tied directly to QS7001 and QVault TPM. And I want to be extremely clear that about this, because right now management, they are being extremely clear, and I want to be clear that, again, as we do know, and I've talked about it in numerous other videos when we talk about backlog, pipeline, and all these other data points. Pipeline, it's not backlog, and pipeline definitely is not guaranteed revenue. I want to make that very clear. And these opportunities, there are still risks regarding conversion, and they still have customer validation requirements, and they still also have technical integration risk. So please don't just look at the big number of $225 million and just automatically treat that like SEALSQ has $225 million sitting in contracted backlog, because that's not the case. It doesn't have that. What this number does tell us, though, is this potential opportunity. This is the amount of potential opportunity that management currently sees right now. And the clear next steps for this is converting that opportunity into actual orders. Now, something else that I want to talk about. Everybody loves to hear, or they're always paying attention to tonality when it comes to management, because one thing that people in any earnings call, any earnings report, any press release, people are always listening to see when it comes to forward guidance, are they taking a step back and do they need to dial things down, or are they reaffirming it, and are they actually staying on track with the goals that they set in place for the year? Because right now you're going to see here that management, they did reaffirm their full year 2026 guidance of 50% to 100% revenue growth, which would be in the range of 27 million to 36 million for 2026. Now, again, remember, I want you guys to remember for a second that H1 preliminary revenue was approximately $11 million. Again, Q1 was $4 million in revenue, and then in Q2 they had $7 million in revenue. So what we're seeing is that the second half of the year is going to matter tremendously, and if they want to hit even the bottom end of that range at that $27 million mark, we're going to need significant acceleration. So this is one of the clearest numbers that we can use to judge execution, to see if they're able to hit that mark by the end of the year 2026 to, at the very least, minimally get that bottom range of $27 million. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about would be regarding QS7001 and QVault. Again, I don't have the clicker available, but right here where you see my mouse, right there, QVault. So this section, depending on how passionate you may be about SEALSQ or about quantum or however you view things, some people, they might view this portion of the letter as maybe a little less exciting, but it is still extremely important, because SEALSQ's post-quantum semiconductor portfolio is anchored primarily by two products. The two products I'm showing you right here, QS7001 and QVault. Now, QS7, I know I'm saying it incorrectly, but QS7001 has already obtained NIST SP800 90B entropy source validation. And management, they also provided updated certification timelines. And for QS7001 V1, the hardware evaluation test report and common criteria laboratory letter are expected in September 2026. So not that far away. And for QS7001 V2, the full PQC test report and common criteria laboratory letter are expected in December of 2026, which also isn't that far out. And for QVault TPM 183, management does expect the FIPS 143 laboratory letter to NIST in December and TCG certification around November of 2026. And QVault TPM 185 has engineering samples available with additional milestones expected during 2027. Now, if you're hearing all of this information and the data that I'm presenting you on this live stream, I want to make it very clear that some people might be even asking that all these things sound very technical and very fancy, but you're probably asking, why should you even care, and why do investors care in the first place? Now, the reason would be because certification isn't simply a marketing tool here. And real quick, I see all the reactions I'm getting for you. Appreciate all the hearts. Again, for all of you that are tuned in, please feel free to hit the like and subscribe button, as I do appreciate the support, and I love you guys very much. Now, SEALSQ points that out that in defense, and they also point out that in energy, automotive, and critical infrastructure, independent validation can actually be a procurement prerequisite. So, in other words, you might have incredible technology, but without the certifications, certain customers simply can't buy the product. So they can't buy the technology and they won't be able to get their hands on it. So that's why it's very important. And another thing that I want to point out, if we scroll down here, let me see if I can find that specific portion. So in the where certification potentially connects directly to revenue is, let me see, I know it's here somewhere. Hold on. Let me find it for you. I'm very sorry, guys, but it's regarding how many prospective customers and partners that they have. Right here, they have more than 15 prospective customers and partners that are actively evaluating QS7001 and its SDK. So again, evaluation does not equal revenue, but we do not have something that is actually measurable. And if those certifications get completed, how many of these evaluations turn into production orders? And that's the conversion that I'm going to be watching for. So the next thing, speaking about partnerships, let's look at the Global Foundry Strategic Partnership, where my mouse clicker is right there. Because on July 8th, SEALSQ signed a strategic memorandum of understanding with Global Foundries covering secure semiconductor platforms, post-quantum cryptography, and semiconductor-based quantum computing. Now, working with MIPS, a Global Foundries company, they're looking to co-develop pre-certified post-quantum security IP and chiplet hardware security components. And they are also looking at cryogenic CMOS ASICs for quantum computing systems. And I do think that this is meaningful from an external validation standpoint. And Global Foundries is obviously a major semiconductor company, and having them willing to work alongside SEALSQ gives additional credibility to the technology. But ultimately, as always, I want to see commercialization, because that's very important. Now, the next portion that I want to talk about will be about this right here, Quobly. Now, where things get interesting, if we read this portion of the press release, on July 10th, SEALSQ, they did sign a $5 million commercial agreement with Quobly. And SEALSQ had previously invested in Quobly as a lead participant in its 115 million euro Series A. And now Quobly is integrating SEALSQ technology into its quantum computing platform. Now, why I personally think this is important is because management explicitly said that this is the first clear instance of a SEAL quantum sovereign vertical stack investment, which is converting into contracted revenue for SEALSQ's core semiconductor and root of trust business. And that's exactly what investors need to see. They need to see investment, integration, contract, revenue, and they need to see that process repeated over and over again. So that brings us to the bigger strategy here, and that is regarding how SEALSQ calls this the SEAL Quantum Sovereign Vertical Stack, and management says that this initiative has a target capital allocation of approximately $200 million, as you can see right here with my mouse clicker, and more than $60 million has already been deployed across IC Alps, Mirex, Quobly, Quantix Edge Security, Colibri TD, EroQ, YSAT, and then WeCan Group. And management is making something very clear. The purpose is not financial diversification. They're trying to control and integrate multiple layers of the quantum ecosystem. That's including chips, cryptography, processors, interconnects, networks, communications, identity, satellites, data, and artificial intelligence. And they call the resulting architecture root to qubit. It's an extremely, in my opinion, an extremely ambitious strategy, and an ambition alone is not what's going to create shareholder value. But I do think that this letter gives investors a much better understanding of how all these seemingly separate investments are supposed to fit together in the grand scheme of things. And also, I want to point out that in the article, SEALSQ also recently appointed Daniel Brau as Chief Quantum Officer. And what personally caught my attention was his mandate is deliberately commercial, and he's supposed to connect the technology SEALSQ has assembled across quantum computing photonics, interconnects, sensing, post-quantum semiconductors, identity, and AI into integrated revenue generating solutions. And management says that there will be portfolio-wide commercial KPIs. And that's exactly what I want to hear, because eventually we need accountability for whether this strategy actually works. And that brings us to perhaps the most important part of this entire CEO letter. And that is the fact that they give us, in their outlook portion, for the second half of 2026, they're going to show their 3 priorities. First off is going to be execution, regarding how they want to convert the QS7001 and the QVault TPM evaluation base into production orders as certification completes. The second thing that they prioritize is none other than the commercialization of the quantum portfolio. And the third thing would be regarding financial discipline, because their liquidity is a strategic asset and they intend to deploy it deliberately rather than quickly. Now, considering the fact that they have approximately $485 million in cash and short-term investments, I do think that the last point is extremely important, because having money alone doesn't mean you should immediately spend it. In fact, I want management waiting for opportunities that actually make strategic and financial sense. And when I put this entire LAES letter together, where I personally land in all of this is I think that this is a significant shareholder update. But it's not just because SEALSQ suddenly announced one gigantic contract today. The importance is that management connected everything together and it gave investors a clearer roadmap. And we've got approximately 120% in preliminary H1 revenue growth, $485 million in cash and short-term investments, and a $225 million plus pipeline, and 2026 guidance reaffirmed, and more than 15 prospective customers and partners evaluating QS7001, and upcoming certification milestones, a $5 million Quobly commercial agreement, and the global foundries relationship, and a $200 million target allocation toward the broader quantum strategy. But obviously, that means that we're now at the hardest part. And the hardest part would be execution. And that's where we're going to be watching SEALSQ throughout the remainder of 2026. And Selena, again, thank you so much for the support. And Clarence, I'm glad to see you here, man. Thanks for tuning in. Now, we've gotten to this portion of the video, and we covered everything that I wanted to cover regarding SEALSQ, ticker symbol LAES. Now, let's zoom out a little bit, and let's talk about other things that we've seen develop in the market. One second, I just want to quickly shout you out, Clarence. I just want to talk about you in the live stream. Nice. And actually, there's one other thing that I'm going to want to talk about from an individual perspective. I just received some more data in the CTM Discord, so I want to show you that in a second. Happy to have you on. You know what? Before we get into the actual broader market analysis, why not cover CTM for a second? So CTM, as you do know, wow, for the first time ever, they're actually having bearish expectations. I was actually not expecting that. But let me see here. So yeah, for the first time ever, we're seeing bearish expectations from, never mind, it changed. Okay, so it just had to update with the data that we have. So let me see. Gija, happy to have you on too, man. Happy to have you. But real quick, before we get on to, and I'm sorry for rambling a little bit, I just got caught off guard. Literally this data that I'm gonna present to you right now literally just came out right now. And also stay tuned, because I do got another interesting video coming up for regarding Castellum CTM. I got the pending. Don't know nothing about that. But anyways, so CTM, we're gonna see here that, and again, shout out to you, Mo. he updated showing a little bit of some of the latest institutional ownership data. You're gonna see here that Vanguard, you're gonna see regarding Vanguard, Northern Trust Group, USBS, and a bunch of other institutional firms are still holding strong with their position. So I'm gonna take a second so you can read over that, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions regarding this institutional ownership. So I'm gonna take a few seconds. I'll give you guys like 15 to 20 seconds just to look at that. Now, another thing that I want to announce, it's just a regular video that's going to be coming out soon, but me and the creator of the CTM Discord, Mo, we both had our own individual calls with Glenn Ives, and we discussed a lot of things. So I'm going to scroll up here and I'm going to show you a lot of the key takeaways I had. So let me show you my post real quick. So my post shows right here. I gave a little quick disclaimer and a full summary of me and Glenn Ives' call. And then Mo, he gave out his own little summary of the call that he had with Glenn Ives. So I just want to let you guys know that right now, and a video is going to be coming out either sometime tomorrow or on Saturday. And right now, we're seeing the price action for CTM actually starting to climb, because ever since the Q2 earnings report that came out last week, there's been a lot of disappointed shareholders, and people were expecting more when it comes. Appreciate you too, Clarence. People were expecting more, and people were expecting this to be almost like the pivoting moment for the company from a financial standpoint. Now, there is lots of context that you have to take into consideration. And I actually am going to cover this in the video where I give my summary on the call that I had with Glenn Ives, where, again, when you take into context where CTM was in Q2 of 2025 compared to Q2 of 2026 this year, last year, as we know, they had those big foundational multi-year runway contracts that I can't remember it's in the hundreds of millions when you put all three together, but a lot of their contracts were ramping up in value, and right now where they're at, it does appear that one of the potential reasons why we saw the revenue and a lot of the financial data points be flat, not negative, but just slightly flat and not as bullish as we wanted it to see, or the numbers that we actually wanted to see with the high expectations that lots of shareholders had. It could just be a condition of government contract timing. That could be one of the reasons, and there's a few other reasons as well. And I'm going to cover that more in the future video. But in my opinion, when I see the steady rise when we see in CTM, besides the fact that markets, whenever there's a drop, most of the time you get that big dip and then things start to stagnate. They climb a little bit and they stagnate. What I'm seeing here, especially with the added context of how the institutions here, with the latest institutional ownership data, in my opinion, what this shows is people saw there were investors that didn't enjoy the press release. Some retail investors did sell off. Institutions are still holding, and they still remain pretty much the same. And now that after the drop happened and some people are starting to reevaluate what they saw, one, they want to get in at cheaper prices because there's still people that just want to get a quick buck and take profits. And also they could be saying, hey, the data wasn't that bad, especially when you put the context in perspective. So maybe we should just buy back in gradually and see what develops over the upcoming quarters. So that's my opinion and my takeaway when it comes to CTM. So let me know what you think in the comment section. And again, feel free to smash the like and subscribe button if you do enjoy the content. Now, the next thing, again, we're going to see a few things here. I accidentally made a mistake. Just give me 1 second. So we're going to see here that from the... One second, guys. I'm just looking at my phone for a second. So from a broader market perspective, we're going to see here that the S&P 500 did move up. And again, LAES had a bullish day, but they didn't just move in isolation. Because again, the S&P 500 had a pretty good day, reaching record highs. The Nasdaq's doing well, the Russell 2K. And again, the importance is the fact that managed connected, but the importance is the fact that you don't want to connect everything when you saw CSQ LAS and think that all of this is individual, because part of this does appear to be macroeconomic. And as we're seeing here, the bonds, treasury yields, they're starting to ease a little bit after lighter than expected wholesale inflation. And let's see a few other headlines. So Anthropic CFO is leading early IPO meetings. And is there anything that you guys want to see covered? Anything at all? Because again, we can just do a little bit of broader market. I didn't cover too much, and I didn't go over too much of the broader market, but I do know that there was some inflation data that people were happy to see come out today. So I know that was the case. And when we see here from the FinViz on the heat map, you're going to see here that semiconductors had a pretty good day, and overall technology sector did pretty well. So what else can we cover today? What else can we cover? Just going through some of the headlines here. 1 second. Yeah, so going through some of the headlines. Let me just think. So, you know what? Let me actually go through the actual numbers. So S&P 500 is up 50 basis points, and the Dow is up around, I could have sworn that they were up almost, let me see. Yeah, so they're up over 70 points. And then the headline from CNBC, again, records right there. Let's look at some of the inflation data that actually came out. So again, the forecast for the core PPI, the actual was at 0.2%, but the forecast was at 0.3%. And PPI, the actual results was here, and the forecast was at 0.2%. So those are the results we got right there. And some people did view this as encouraging, and I guess from a price action perspective, you can see that the market reacted in a positive way. Now, the reason why that might be the case is because right now, one of the biggest questions hanging over the market, and you hear it time and time and time again, it's regarding inflation. Now, if inflation does remain elevated, again, the Federal Reserve is going to continue to have less flexibility if that's the case, if it continues to rise. But if inflation cools down, and it cools, it gives policymakers a little more room when considering interest rates. And real quick, circling back over to the treasury yields and the bonds. So the 10-year treasury yield in these screenshots and the headlines that we see right here, it was around 4.64% down roughly. At the time when I looked at it earlier, it was down 5 basis points. Now, when yields do move lower, just going over some basic things that we've talked about numerous times in previous live streams. Again, you're going to see, particularly moving alongside the inflation data as well, investors can become more comfortable owning longer duration assets. And what are some of the longest duration equities? And specific companies that we regularly talk about in these sectors would be regarding artificial intelligence, something like quantum, maybe something, even covering what we've talked about in a few videos previously regarding space and other small cap technology companies. So these would be companies where investors are valuing potential earnings years into the future. So cooler inflation plus falling yields can create a pretty favorable combination for speculative growth. And these are the conditions that investors that have those types of interests want to see. And you can see here that it also reflects in the heat map, as in my opinion, I would say it looks a little more like it was a risk on type of day as well. Yeah, I mean, technology had a pretty good day, semiconductors is good, so yeah, pretty good day overall in the technology sector. So, I mean, I've already covered everything pretty generally, what it is I wanted to cover. So is there anything else in the comment section before I do close out that you want me to cover? I didn't go too much in depth with the broader market analysis like I usually do. So anything else for my subscribers and my fan base that you want to see? Anything you want me to cover? Because again, I'll keep this open just for a little bit. And again, if you're not a subscriber, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, as I do appreciate the support from you. And I know not everybody has it available, but again, InvestQ memberships are available now. So if you do wish to support the channel or potentially gain access to exclusive content, feel free to become a member in the InvestQ community. So yeah, so that's pretty much all I got for today. With that being said, guys, David over here at InvestQ out. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next video.